Welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I'm really excited to have my next guest. And my next guest is none other than Zarina Kanji. How are you, Zarina?
Hi, Taylor. I'm good, thank you.
Researching for this podcast has been really interesting for me. Getting to know you and understanding where you've been. And looking forward to having a conversation about your journey. So I'm going to introduce you, Zarina, so you can, understand how great you actually are. So, Zarina Kanji, Head of Business Development and Marketing for Tmall, which is part of the largest e-commerce business globally. So people do your Googles. This is the Alibaba Group. She has several years' experience in brand partnerships and business development, from fashion buying experience and now most recently focusing on tech and the health and wellness space.
Thanks, Taylor. I didn't know you were going to do your research on me. It's like this is your life.
Oh man, do you know, I just love researching amazing women. And someone out there is watching this podcast and will be inspired. They are either stuck in terms of what they want to do for their career, or they've just probably come out of uni or coming out of college and they don't know what to do. And I think just providing real life insights as to how your career can possibly develop will help someone out there. So you have an interesting background, and it would just be lovely for you to take me through your career journey, just sort of, where you're from, what you studied, and how you've gotten into the role that you're in right now.
Sure. So, where do I start? So, I'm from a really small town on the south coast of the UK. My dad is from Tanzania, but he's Indian. He came to London in the 60s, got his first job as an engineer. My mum was the accountant. They met. He never left the small town on the south coast of England. So we grew up there. Mm-hmm. I hated it. I desperately wanted
to get out,
to go to London, to be in the big city, to be where everything was happening. And I really loved fashion from a super early age. It's kind of in our family history. Like my great grandparents imported textiles from India to Africa. My grandmother was a tailoress. My mum used to make clothes for us. So it's always been something that we've done. And my dad always used to buy the Sunday Times. He still does. And I used to pore over the Sunday Times style, looking at the fashion pages. And then I was super lucky in that when I was 14, we got a really cool textiles teacher, Liz Queeding, who is still my friend today. And she kind of inspired me that there was this whole world of fashion I could work in. So I went to uni and studied fashion. And then I left, and my dad was like, you need to get a job. I've just put you through university.
I know. Was that a shock to you?
I wanted to be a journalist.
Right.
And I wanted to go on and do more study. And he said, I'll give you 6 more months of funding, but then you're on your own. And I went, oh God, I'm never going to get a journalist job in 6 months. So I went into buying. So I took a job as a buying assistant at Jaeger, which, if people don't know, is a British heritage brand. And at that point, Belinda Earl, who is an incredible woman from the fashion industry, she did incredible work at Debenhams. She was just taking over at Jaeger. And I thought, okay, this could be a good opportunity. And it was at the time when we were launching Jaeger London, which was really interesting because it was a high street brand going into catwalk shows, which wasn't really done at that time. And I worked on the knitwear and the casual wear team. So I spent a lot of my time calling in samples, calling up factories in Hong Kong, putting ranges together, learning how to negotiate prices, digging through the archives, which was amazing. And then a couple of years into that, a friend of a friend was working at Ralph Lauren, and there was a job coming up, and it was a different type of buying. So at Jaeger, I did production buying, where you're working with a design team, working with samples, putting the things together. At Ralph Lauren, they did selection buying from the UK. So it was basically the designs would come to you in sketches, and you would place your order, your buy from sketches, and you were working more on the money side, like the money side, basically working on a P&L, looking at the sales, looking at the numbers, and was still really working very closely with the store teams to find out what the customers wanted. So I thought it would be a good experience to just get that other side of buying. So I understood both the creative and the commercial. And I ended up staying for 7 years. Loved it.
And at that point, obviously when you started, you were very interested in the fashion side of it. Yeah. Were you still curious about fashion? Were you like at that point, oh, I think fashion buying is the direction I want to go in? Or were you still developing, thinking, actually, from Jaeger to Ralph Lauren, there are other areas I could possibly go into?
No, I was still like pretty fixed. Like I wanted to do fashion. Like I loved it. That was my thing. I was never going to do anything else. Yeah. And I can't draw. So I never wanted to be a designer.
Okay. That was clear. That was evident.
Yeah. Other people might say I'm all right, but I don't think I can draw to the standard that I would like to draw. So that was never my thing. And I know a lot of designers don't actually draw, but yeah, that put me off. So yeah, then it was kind of that time where we were in a recession and I was like, geez, I need to kind of shake things up. But everything was very good. You know, when you're in your 20s and you get to fly to New York 3 or 4 times a year for work and make out like you're Rachel Green, it was a great job. But I got offered the chance to go and live in Dubai and work for Ralph Lauren in Dubai. So it was like, I just thought, oh, fine, I'll go and do it, because I really wanted to move to the US at that point. And it was really difficult to move internally. I wasn't senior enough. So I thought, if I go and do something else international, then you don't know where it might lead. So I went and did that, lasted about 6 months. And I heard that one of my friends was leaving House of Fraser in the Middle East because she was having a baby. So I thought, I can then complete the fashion buying experience. So I've done production buying, I've done selection buying. If I go to House of Fraser, I can do multi-brand buying, which is where you go around all the showrooms and you get to go to some shows. You put together like capsule collections and various different designers. So I jumped on that chance and did that for a bit. So that was kind of like my fashion journey. And then I thought, you know what, I've worked for 10 years. I'm going to go traveling. So I jacked it all in and went traveling for about 6 months around Southeast Asia and came back, and my parents were like, what have you done? You have no job. I was confident I'd get one.
But and then you had worked 10 years. So, you know, let's pick up that. The fact I'm just getting out the message of you've dispelled the notion that for career progression, if it's not working in your town, in your city, in that department, there are a few options. It's either you leave that city or town, or you think of going internationally, and you were open to traveling, which sort of let you complete that, you know, journey of fashion buying. So you'd worked 10 years straight. So to take a break, I mean, a sabbatical, that's brave in itself and a way of self-discovery. But I sort of understand your parents when they say, right, girl, you're back now. You're unemployed. What next?
Yeah. But then I got headhunted for a job in Singapore. So it was a startup called Lazada. I had never, ever heard of it. Wasn't really sure about it, to be honest. Watched a couple of videos of the CEO, didn't pay too much attention to it, but they said they wanted to hire me. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll go. I'll give it 6 months. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I'll leave. Ended up staying 4 years. So I went to be a buyer. Within a couple of months, they quickly pivoted and we didn't buy. It was sales. It was business development. So I was the founding member of the fashion and sport brand partnerships team. And I spent my time on a plane every week, flying around Southeast Asia, inspiring brands, international brands, to set up business in the new e-commerce platform that we were creating. So it was very intense. We used to work all the time because it was a startup, weekends, evenings, all the time. But I learned a tremendous amount. And then a couple of years into that, Lazada was acquired by Alibaba. So I stayed for a couple more years. And then because I'd been living abroad then for about 6-7 years, I decided that I wanted to move back to the UK. Looking out the window, it's a decision that 50% of the time I regret.
The rain and the grey skies. Yeah.
So yeah, I moved back to London in the summer of 2018 with Alibaba, and they already had a brilliant person in fashion, my colleague May. And so I was put into a different team. So I was put into the health and wellness and the food and beverage team. So I spent the past nearly 5 years doing that. So that's my career journey.
That's an interesting one. And, as you now look back, for someone who is potentially thinking about, oh my goodness, traveling abroad, what does that mean? It feels like the first important thing is you need to have a passport. That's the first important thing.
It's my most prized possession, my passport.
Exactly. Because, most people, when they turn 16 or 17, the first thing their parents do is pay for them for a driver's license. But I'm the same as when I was growing up. My father was always, and my mother were like, you always need to have a passport because you never know when that opportunity might come and you need to travel. And as we all know, when you're trying to get a passport really quickly, it doesn't actually happen. So that was the first thing they sort of invested in. But apart from that, if you were to give advice for someone who's looking to live in different countries and work, what are some of the things that you learned there that you could probably say, if there were 5 things that you should know about living and working in different countries, what would they be?
Firstly, do it.
Just do it.
You just do it. Like, you can't ever experience it from an armchair. Just go and do it. You learn things, you meet people that you would never do otherwise. Secondly, when you get there, travel as much as you possibly can. Thirdly, get involved in the local culture, figure out what's going on, understand it, try and, there's so many expats that move abroad and then you end up
they stay in their bubble, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah,
and I did as well, but you have to try to get to understand the local culture, the religion, the languages, the food, because it's, you can go on holiday and you can get a little bit of something, but it's only by being there for a prolonged period that you get to get a fully rounded experience. What would be my 4th and 5th? I think the 4th one would probably be to just appreciate it, every so often, take stock and appreciate it. Because when you're doing it, it just feels normal. But then when you come back and people say, oh, what have you done? I can't believe you did that. That was amazing. How do you navigate this? How do you navigate that? All of those things come quite naturally to me. I'm quite comfortable with being in random places. I guess that maybe comes from just being in my genes, from my heritage or whatever. But I guess for a lot of people, it's not that innate. So just kind of take stock and appreciate it. And the other thing I used to do was I liked to come home. I hated the town, but I really wanted to come home and see my parents and my friends and stuff. So I used to when I was in Singapore, I'd come home every 6 months and I would make a calendar. I'd sketch it myself. And then I'd plot in all of these things I was going to do to make sure that I didn't let the time pass me by and just go to work. So I used to kind of always be up on top of what the new bars were opening, or restaurants or coffee shops or gym studios. And I would make a note of them all. And then I'd plot them in this calendar, an art exhibition, so that I could have all of these things. And then I'd have a record of all the things I'd done. So I could look back over that 6 months and go, oh, look at all that stuff I did. So I tried to just really make the most of the experience. I think that's it.
Yeah, definitely taking the time to reflect. You mentioned that's a very important point in terms of while you're in the job, in the position, in the role, you're just going through the motions. And then it's only 5 years later that you realize, oh my goodness, that skill set or that attribute or that quality that I'm now able to utilize in this new role it came from the experiences that I had then. And what are you most proud of in terms of achievements? So from your career journey so far, what are some things you could, take out as things that you're proud of that you've done?
I mean, definitely the fact that I have gone and worked in 2 completely different continents. Proud of having done that. In terms of recent projects, I worked on a really cool project at the end of last year with the BBC Storyworks and the Global Wellness Institute. They produced a series called In Pursuit of Wellness, and you could apply to take part. So I wrote a brief and I applied to be one of the stories. I think they had about 350 applicants, and we were selected as one of 20 stories. So we told the story of wellness in China and how wellness is being modernized in China, because a lot of my work is focused on China. So that was really exciting to be part of that journey, to work with both of those teams and to do the research for it. And it was then turned into a multimedia article, which is available right now still to be viewed globally. And it launched at the Global Wellness Summit in Tel Aviv in November. And then I was invited to go and deliver a keynote speech at the summit. And Israel was somewhere that I'd wanted to go forever. So that was really exciting. And I got to speak on a panel with some incredible people from the wellness industry, and get to see a new country, which was great. So that I'm really proud of that achievement. I'm really proud of some of the brands I've worked with who have had really great success, from kind of standing starts to, one of the beauty tech brands I work with is now like the top 10 brand from Europe selling into China, which is a really great achievement. People have been able to do good things through working with me. So I'm proud of that. And I think the other thing is that I'm really self-sufficient. My parents put me through uni, but then everything else I've done myself. So I'm really proud of that. Like this house I sit in, I bought it myself. I'm really proud of not having to have taken anything, just to work hard, because that's something that's very much in our family. Like, you work hard, you don't get handouts. You get educated and then you work. So yeah, I'm proud of that.
That's really brilliant. I mean, and the keynote speech in Tel Aviv, was that your first time delivering a keynote speech? So you'd had sort of the prep with all the speaking engagements you'd done before.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of public speaking, and hopefully this comes across for me as well. Quite a lot of public speaking and podcasts and things like that, interviews throughout my whole career. But that's one of the biggest ones I've done. So yeah, it was quite high pressure, but it was. I did it on the second day, so then I could relax and enjoy the rest of the thing. And then it's quite good when you're speaking quite early at these kind of summits, because I didn't know anybody before I went. I sort of met the BBC Storyworks and the Global Wellness Summit team via Zoom, but we'd never met in person. But once you've spoken at these events, people know who you are, and then they come up to you and they'll talk to you, and then you've got this whole circle of new contacts to enjoy the rest of the summit with. So that's really cool.
Definitely. Talk to me about your speaking experience. So have you been media trained? Is that something that the businesses you've worked at, they've facilitated for you? And how did you embrace the first time someone said, well, we'd love you, Zarina, to speak about the business or a specific topic? How was that experience for you?
So yes, I have been media trained a few times. The first time I spoke, so I've been doing it since my first role. So at Jaeger, they used to host these biannual retail summits, and they would bring the store managers of every store in the country down to London, and we would have to present the range to them. And then you did the same at Ralph Lauren. That's just part of the course as a buyer. You have to present the story that is the designer's vision, and then why you have created this range for them, and what is great about it that they can then use as selling techniques to sell to the customers. So I used to do it at Jaeger, where I think there were about 500 people. And when you're, how old was I? 22? When you're 22 and you'll get to stand up in front of 500 people and tell a story. That's quite fun, but I guess quite intimidating. I don't remember being intimidated by it though. So I've kind of done it forever.
It's just evolved, hasn't it, in terms of...
It's evolved, yeah. I generally don't get too nervous about it until like the very last second. But yeah, I'm kind of fine with doing it. I know a lot of people hate it.
Yeah, you're reminding me of my retail days, because just going back, the first time I ever presented was to the store managers team about the collection, what was coming up, what are the trends. That was really the first time of standing up in front of a team. And I felt that was easier because I sort of knew my team and what they were going to ask me. Where it went to another level is when I had to present to agents who you never know what they're going to ask and how to respond to certain questions, or if you don't have the answer there and then in an agent situation, reflect and say, I'll get back to you on that. And then come panel discussions, where panel discussions are nice because you sort of like can prep beforehand and you have a group of you around you. And I always thought somehow you'd be thrown under the bus, but everyone is actually really nice and courteous and respectful. So they'll ask questions that don't put you in a pickle, but the confidence to be able to say, oh, that's an interesting question. I'll get back to you, or something for us to review. It's something we're looking at. That just gives me the shivers of not knowing what to say, but then I watch it back and then it's all worked out. I don't know if you feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, no, I think I do. I quite like the panels actually. Yeah. I did the one I did at Global Wellness Summit was very cool because we had obviously the questions prepped and we did a bit of a rehearsal. So you sort of know what people are going to say, but then you get inspired through the summit. So you add in new bits, but it's always a great chance to learn something from somebody new. I always think I was given this piece of advice by one of she was the HR director when I was at Ralph Lauren, a lady called Kelly, who'd been a mentor to me while we were working at Ralph. And she said to me once, you can always learn something from everyone.
Definitely.
Even if it's bad, even if you learn, like, I'm never going to do that thing again, you can learn and you might learn something about yourself. So being on the panel discussions are really good for that. I enjoy them.
Yeah. And what are some challenges you face, particularly as a woman? I think that's, because the whole purpose of this podcast is to inspire women. What are some challenges that you faced in your career?
Yeah, so I was really thinking about this when I was prepping for this interview, and I'm like, what challenges did I face? Because I think I'm quite good at just forgetting them when it happens. I'm like, oh, I did it. It's great.
Back on.
I guess one thing that I always wish, and because I worked at Ralph, I worked with quite a lot of Americans, and Americans are just so much more confident than British people. And as I reflect back, I wish that I had the confidence that I do now, because in the last few years, I've got a lot more confident, which I think people who know me would be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I'm shocked. This imposter syndrome coming up that we have from time to time.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember like working with some girls at Ralph and they were so confident and they could speak up, and I didn't always do that. I wish that I had been bolder, and I kind of wish that, I'm far away from what happens in education these days, but I think it would be great if in schools and colleges they had programs where you could, learn to speak and speak up and be confident about what you're saying, and try not to worry about being perfect all the time. Because then I think I would have spoken up and been more confident and possibly kind of progressed a bit faster, but all in good time. I wouldn't have got the opportunities I'd had if I'd done them at different times.
Yeah, so the American school and education system, they pride themselves on storytelling. So if you've ever watched the American version of Dragon's Den, which is Shark Tank, they're very good at storytelling. So when the entrepreneurs, founders come in, they're very good at telling a story as to why something happened. And that comes from them having, show and tell, presenting in schools. Whereas I think other educational systems, unless you're in the debate club or presentation club, you don't really learn that skill set until you're thrown in the deep end at work and having to present something. And what are you trying to say and why is it important? So you're right. That would be something it's good to put that in the educational system. Or if you're interested in that, just watch YouTube videos and Google and
Totally. It's so much more accessible now, isn't
be
it?
curious.
But, yeah, I remember because all of my dad's family live in Canada and the US. And I remember going over there. I don't know, we must have been 9, 10. We used to spend most of our summers in Toronto visiting my Uncle Nick, who's like, he's my hero. And I remember him going there once, and he was hosting a large party, and he gave a speech. And he was just my Uncle Nick. But then he gave this speech to all of these people, and he was so charismatic and natural, and he threw in all these anecdotes, and people were just revering him because, I mean, he deserves to be. He's an incredible man. But I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to be like him when I grow up. So yeah, quite young age, I was kind of inspired by that, saw like the best way to do it. And then I guess from that, I just, developed it from that.
Yeah. So you've talked to me about your career. Talk to me sort of about what you're doing now, what you love about your job. You've talked about how you've helped build successful brands. But if someone was to ask you, you have over 10 years experience, what are the qualities that make you badass, that make you the superwoman, that your superpower for doing what you do right now?
Gosh, what are my superpowers? This is a good task. I think it's around like my ability to create networks. So I work a lot of the time with lots of different brands, lots of different people. And I really love when we get to bring them together and we get to kind of create little communities, and they all get to, they're all kind of nervous, like they don't want to share information with each other. And then after 5 minutes, they're like, oh my God, I have that problem too. Or, wow, that's amazing. I want to do it. How did you do it? And they really get to learn from each other. And I think that my ability to kind of bring people together, and the right people together, because you can't bring everyone, the right people who will benefit from each other and learn from each other, I really enjoy that. I think that's a good quality of mine. And I think I spend, it sounds a bit weird to say this about myself, but I spend a lot of time like researching my industry. So researching the newest things in health and wellness, and in beauty tech, and in food and beverage, and in China trends, broad China trends, broad international trends, so that I can really understand it. And I think those are sort of things that you can spend 6 months doing it and you can have like a good view, but it's only when you've worked for like 18 years that I've worked that you've got this really big picture, and then you can go out and disseminate that information and give the kind of highlights to who needs it. I guess that's like a superpower that I have.
Yeah, definitely continuing to educate yourself and being in the know of what's happening in your industry, and also, political, economical, macroeconomic things that might be affecting the industries that you're in is so important.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
How would you describe your work ethic?
I describe it as working smart. I like to be effective. Yeah, I try and work smart these days.
When you say these days, is that a lesson you've learned over time, working smarter?
Yeah, and I think, the way that we work nowadays, where you don't have to sit in an office 9 till 6, 5 days a week, you can kind of prioritize a lot better. I just think, now I've worked for this long.
It's a nice feeling to have, isn't it? To know that you can work smarter, and having those. Yeah. I have the quadrant: what's urgent, what's non-urgent, what's important, what's not important, and that helps me plan my week and day. Honestly, it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about work-life balance and self-care, because you've said at the beginning of your career, which I think is right. It's one of the things I admire in people who've advanced in their careers is everyone tells a story of at the beginning of how they had to put in the work the overtime, sometimes work the weekends, because that is how you learn. And that is how you build your skill set. That is how you build, your attributes and getting better at what you do. But now, obviously, as you rise into senior management positions, etc., how do you take time for you, self-care? And is it important to you at all?
Yeah. I guess for me, it's working out. Like I work out every single day. Even if it's just like, I'm going to go for a 5K really fast walk. Working out is like my thing. It keeps me sane. It keeps me healthy. It gives me some people to see, some community. I go to CrossFit, so CrossFit's all about community. Yeah, the working out, that's like my number one for self-care, I think.
It's a good one to have, isn't it? Because everyone knows, who knows me knows I'm into my fitness and gym and running, because not just about the community, but doing something consistently over time, and the discipline not just helps you from a obviously physical appearance and your health, but just mentally, how you're able to, it shows that you're able to commit to something every day as well.
Yeah.
And
the other thing that I really like about, so I love Barry's boot camp. I love CrossFit. I also love paddleboarding. I have my own paddleboard and I get out on it as much as I possibly can. But with all of those things, they're hard. You cannot think about the rest of life. Like you can't think, oh God, what can I put into slide 10?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Back to so-and-so, like when you are breathless and you're trying to hang off a bar and throw a barbell over your head, or you're like at sea trying to battle against some really choppy waves, you can't think about that. Like you have to think about the task in hand. So I think it's a really good way of escapism and just, remembering like the fundamentals of life, like being able to breathe and stay alive while you're doing this challenge. That's quite sadistic, isn't it? Doing something that means you just only have to focus on staying alive. But I like that.
No, but it's important. I was listening to, if you ever want to listen to a podcast by Chris Williamson, he's got a podcast called Modern Wisdom, and he was recently on the Diary of a CEO, and he was talking about how, to your point, doing things outside of your work life, but things that take you away from screen time. So he has the advice of sunlight before screen time. So getting up and getting out, so whether it's taking a walk, a run, just in terms of good habits for your own physical well-being. And then, whether it's the gym, doing something consistently, setting a goal, saying, I'm going to go to the gym 6 times a week or work out 1 hour. It's something that you're setting to yourself and committing to yourself, which is just good in terms of developing good habits. So funny enough, my head of sales, Amy, shout out to Amy, she's into paddleboarding. And I never understood why, but you've explained it really well in terms of you're on the board and you just have to focus on that one particular thing. You might have to give it a go.
Oh, yeah. Calm down. I'll take you.
For sure.
Yeah. I do I'll go like paddleboarding and just, go along the coast, and you go on a bit like a couple of hours journey. And I do paddleboard yoga, and I also do like a paddleboard fitness class. So you do, you're doing like squats and sit-ups and burpees on the board. It's super fun.
That is so interesting. I'm going to Google that afterwards.
It's amazing for your core. Yeah, I'll take you.
So talk to me about your family and how important that is to you. You've talked to me about your fitness community. Would you say that your family and your community in terms of your fitness tribe are the key relationships in your life, that keep you going and motivate you and inspire you?
I guess, my parents are like a constant, they're, and it's quite interesting. So I was listening to a podcast the other day that was like, this is true. Like, when you kind of say, what did your parents want for you when you grew up? Like if I'd ask my mum advice, she'd be like, do whatever makes you happy. And if I ask my dad for advice, it's like, you need to do something where you get, you need to be successful, you need to be educated, you need to have a career, you need to earn some money. And this podcast was saying that if you're a first generation immigrant, you want your children to do better than you. So you're always pushing them, like work hard, work hard, work hard. Whereas if you're just like from here, so my mum was born and raised in the UK, she's full on British. She's just like, well, what are you trying for? Just be happy. And so that's quite an interesting balance to have grown up with. But yeah, so they're always very consistently giving those messages, which helps. And then, my fitness group. And then I've got, my friendships have like really changed over the years because I've moved around. And when they have kids and they move to the suburbs, you just lose touch. So I feel like my friendships are constantly evolving. But I do have like some really solid people who I can kind of go to and laugh and seek advice and whatever. I guess like the people that I probably connect with the most are the ones that are kind of like from my kind of background, or ones that have lived abroad as well. Because I don't know, I guess you just kind of think in the same mindset. But yeah, I've got like a good solid group who I can always go and hang out with.
Yeah, that resonates with me in terms of parents who. So in terms of my mother and my father, they were the first ones to go to university in their family. So they were always about education, because it opens up opportunities. Yeah. And it will afford you, the life that you want, to be able to travel and so on. And obviously, when I speak to friends who've probably grown up here, they're all about just be happy, just do what makes you happy, but do what makes you happy. But you should be able to sustain yourself at the same time. Yeah. So it's that combination of follow your passion, but also hopefully that passion should be able to sustain you in some way. That is true. Let's talk about networking and how important is networking in your role, and for someone who's out there that might struggle. Are there any tips that you could give from that perspective?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, how important is it in my role? It varies. My role is business development, so that's my job. I have to go out and find people and meet people. So I do it in a variety of ways, either through, finding brands through reading the news or through Instagram or whatever, and then reaching out to people on LinkedIn. So it's a lot of like very cold calling, or going to trade fairs and meeting people, exhibitions and meeting people, getting introduced like, oh, so-and-so is really in this space, you should meet them, and you just have to just drop them a note and say, let's meet for coffee. So I'm constantly networking. I think tips I could give, just
go for
like,
it.
The more you do it, the easier it gets. And people are just people, so they're all just normal. No one's really that intimidating. Just go and meet them.
Yeah, and for every door that closes, I always, how many no's have you gotten? They're probably more than the yeses, isn't it, in terms of approaching and connecting? But people don't see that; they just see the successes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think it's important, and especially in this day and age, you've got so many ways. Traditional cold calling was picking up the phone, looking at the telephone book, saying, who can you call? I mean, shows my age. But now it's, okay, LinkedIn, or you go to an event, or you approach, join a Zoom call, or there's so many. The world is your oyster in terms of how you can reach out to people. A DM these days, all you need is your phone, to start that journey as well.
Exactly.
Mentoring. Do you have a mentor?
Not really. I just have like a few great people who I can go to for advice.
That's probably what it is, isn't it? That over your career, you've built this network and built people who you can just pick up the phone, and they don't have to be specifically defined as a mentor, but they are inspiring you, mentoring you in that way, isn't it, as well? Yeah. I think it's recognizing that too, because sometimes we put ourselves under immense pressure to say we have to find this one person who has all the answers. But you can learn from various people, whether it's people in your team, whether it's your boss, whether it's, people who you peers, friends. It's very fluid. It doesn't have to be one thing.
No. And I think if you're getting your information from a variety of sources, then you're getting 360-degree view that you can then take in yourself, analyze, and then work out the best next step.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than relying on one person to give you the answer. No one's going to give you the answer.
But also trusting your instincts. I mean, how many times have you made decisions that you've just had to trust yourself as well, that you are making that right decision?
Exactly. At the end of the day, you can't rely on anybody else to make a decision for you. You have to make your own decision, because you're the one that has to live with the consequences. So yeah, it's got to be you.
Yeah. So Zarina, what are 3 things that, people don't know about you?
Okay. I guess people know this by now, but like, number 1, I love traveling.
Yeah.
But I really like traveling solo.
Really?
Yeah, I actually really like
So
it.
you don't do the whole thing, girls trip of let's all go to Ibiza, let's all go to, you know.
No, I can do that for like 2.5 days and then I'm like, give me space. No, I actually really like going solo because you see more.
Mhm.
You end up wandering a little bit further than you would with other people. You explore more. I'm pretty like streetwise and savvy, I think. So yeah, I went backpacking in Myanmar a few years ago, switched my phone off for 10 days and it was fine. You know, had a great time, made some new friends, saw loads of cool stuff. So yeah, I really like doing that solo. But my mum said I've done this ever since I was little. Whenever I've done something or I see something, I always want to go and take somebody else back to see it. She says I would still do it. Like I would, you know, my aunt would take me somewhere and then I'd be like, oh, Mummy, Daddy, I want you to come and see it too. And I still kind of do that now. I don't always go back, but yeah, that is one thing. The second thing is that I really like world music.
Oh.
So yeah, I go to
what type of world music? So what artists are you listening to right now?
Mostly I like quite a lot of African music. Which, you know, probably wouldn't be that surprising when you now know about me. But yeah, like my favourite stage at Glastonbury is the West Holt stage because it's just music from all over the world. And I've got this app on my phone that I learned about from Gwyneth Paltrow called Radio. And you go onto it and you can pick like any country in the world and you can pick the decade and then it just plays music from that era.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's a good way of educating yourself about, because like you said, you know, unfortunately, everything's so commercialized and mainstream. If you really want to learn about music, you have to understand the culture and the heritage of where it actually originated from.
Yeah. It's a really cool app.
Yeah. That's a good one for me to check out then as well.
Yeah, it is. And then the third thing about me, I'm quite a hippie.
In what way?
I'm really into astrology. Like I've got some crystals. Like I read tarot card, get my tarot cards read, palm reading. Like I'm all over.
You love positive energies around you. I mean, why not?
Why not? Exactly.
So is your house all feng shui?
No, it's just like stylish. What's your star sign?
Aquarius. Water.
Yeah. I don't think I'd have guessed that about you. I'm an Aries.
You paused too long there. Should I be worried? Would you have thought I was an Aquarian?
No. I'd have put you as a Capricorn. Because you're really smart.
Interesting.
You work really hard. Yeah, no, I'm an Aries, so
take compliments all around. Who would you describe as your trailblazer women?
So I've never met this woman, but I'm really impressed by what she's doing at the moment. There's a woman called Sue Fennessy, and she started a social media app called We Are 8, and it's social media for the good. So it's got zero hate tolerance. Zero tolerance for hate. And you watch this really great content and you can choose when you watch brand ads. And then for the brands to advertise, they have to donate to charity. And then you as a user can also choose to donate to charity or take the money for yourself. But the money always goes to climate change charities. So I think she's doing a really cool thing. And the other person who I think is really cool, also I've never met her, but I really respect Anita Rani. Do you know her?
No. Who is she?
She presents Women's Hour. She's presented Country File. She does a lot of work on like Radio 2 and Six Music. She wrote a book called The Right Sort of Girl because she's Indian, grew up in Bradford, I think. So I recently read that book and I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like I was turning down pages to make references. But yeah, she's super cool. I like her.
So I can feel you are attracted to women who are making a difference in the world and or in their space.
Yeah, definitely.
Zarina, circling back, you've just shared your amazing career journey and how you've traveled and how you've sort of gone from that fashion background to now business development, working with people. What are the 3 Trailblazer tips you would give, having had this conversation that could probably inspire someone out there?
Yeah. So my first tip would be risk. Take a risk. You've got to keep evolving and just trying out life. Like, that's the way to experience it. If you're going to sit in your comfort zone and be like a 6 out of 10, that's not for me. You've got to go out and like find the new opportunities and experience them all. So yeah, take a risk. The second would probably be, remember, you are so much more capable than you think you are, or than you were yesterday. If I look back, if I were my 18-year-old self, would I think I'd have done all these things? I thought I was going to do good things. I thought I was going to do cool things, but I didn't ever imagine I'd do all the things that I have done. And there's still so much further to go. So yeah, you're much more capable than you think you are. And my third piece of advice is health is wealth. Like, you've got to work out every day. Like, you've got to be healthy, obviously in moderation, because you need to enjoy life. But if I'm not healthy, I can't do anything. I'm no good to anyone. I'm no good to myself. Health.
That's amazing. And you touched on an important point about, growth comes from discomfort. So doing the things that you are scared to do, you will not grow if you're complacent in doing the same things all the time. All successful people, or people who've suddenly, had that idea to start their business or to make the next career move, it came from a place of discomfort, saying, I just have to do it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just need to go for it as well.
It was like Barack Obama said, you only ever need to be 51% sure of a decision to go for it.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Last thing, where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years?
I don't know, but I quite like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Hopefully somewhere warm.
That's a good thing to aim for. Well, you love traveling, and if you love world music, then that's already probably a sign of where you might potentially end up, where your journey might take you, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you can't plan too much. If I look, 10 years ago is when I was moving to Dubai. I never then imagined I'd move to Singapore and then I'd come back to London and I'd meet you and all the people that I've met since. And, usually 10 years is a long time. I have no idea.
Yeah, you're living in the present, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Zarina. This has been really insightful. I feel like I've learned more about you. I mean, I think about we met each other, 5 years ago? And a lot's happened since then, but we've stayed in touch, and I've always found you very amazing, formidable, inspiring.
Likewise.
And there's so much to learn for you, and I'm sure you've inspired someone out there. So thank you for taking the time, and I will see you soon.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just remember, if you enjoyed what you heard and what you saw, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube page, follow us on all streaming channels, and please share your comments, what you thought, anything that you learned, and tell another woman about this podcast, because we're hoping to inspire a generation. Thank you very much.